take a distraction. We spoke earlier about the equipment that I was introducing, which is called Muse. Muse is it's a brain sensing equipment with an app that you can use for your meditational session. You know that one of the biggest topics we talk about is stress and our response to stress, and also the whole space of creativity. Most people struggle with purpose and what they want. And actually, when we were created and sent on this journey, we were also sent with our purpose. So it's actually inside of you to find out what it is. And for some people, it's easy. It comes when they're 5 years old. For some of us, it takes a long time to find it. Yeah, well, it is the journey. That's the life. Because, you know, in Buddhism, they say there are 3 big questions. Who am I? What do I want? And where am I going? Those are the 3 big questions of life, right? And most of us struggle to answer those questions. But today we're going to talk about metabolism, right? And your metabolic code. So I want to take us through 3 big things that is very comprehensive with regard to the issue of metabolism. Metabolism and our metabolic code or metabolic type is really at the essence of what we call our epigenetics, right? So let's begin by drawing a couple of diagrams. So at the center of your life is your genetics. And your genetics provides us what we call your underlying risk. We are more interested in the risk than in the optimizers. So give me an example, Victor, of an optimizer in your genetic architecture.
Hopefully longevity or...
Well, not hopefully. We want to look at the things we have. You're tall, big guy.
Yeah.
That is a genetic optimizer, right? Because just by your presence, you have a lot of influence and impact. Just by being tall. In a community where most people are not tall, because you are on the higher side of height. Right? That's an optimizer. But we're not interested in optimizers. We're interested in the underlying risks. And what could be a risk in your genetics? No. Why do you say heart problems? So I want you to really understand this. So your underlying genetic risk tends to come from your family history. Okay, or your uncles, your aunties, your mother, your grandparents. That's where you see the reference of your genetic risk. Plus, that's why we run pathway genomics. So I want us to understand this. What is genetic risk telling us? And what is genetic risk telling us?
Like cancer. Cancer is genetic too. Can be genetic.
Yes, it can be. Yes.
To give to read. I don't know.
Okay, so I see where you're going. So our underlying genetic risk just shows that there is a potential weakness in our architecture for that illness. Yeah, potential weakness. You understand? I say potential weakness. Right.
We address all the time. We can.
Yeah, well, you're going to the next step. Let's just understand the underlying weakness, right? So, for example, if you're short, that's a genetic risk, right? Because that means that it's easier for me to catch you. It's easier for the animals to catch you. It's easier for Victor to beat you, right? So being short is a genetic risk in an architecture of survival. Is that making sense? And therefore, most short people tend to be very tough. So they compensate it by being really strong and tough. Do you get the point? And most short people are very successful. Like Jack Ma and people like that. Short people tend to be very successful people because that's how they overcome it. And you know, women don't want to marry short people. So short people know that the only way they're going to attract nice women is by being successful, being smart, and being rich, because they can't fix the height issue. Do you see that? So you need to look at life that way. How do people compensate for underlying genetic shortcomings? It's the same thing with chronic illness, right? And you tend to find out that tall people are less successful because they already came with an advantage and they think they have the advantage already, so they don't work hard at it. Do you see the point? I'm talking about men, not women. When a woman is tall, it is actually a disadvantage because there are very few men who can marry a tall woman. That's the problem, yes. But shorter women, tall men don't mind. Even short women don't want to marry short men. I'm just saying, societal, right? As a generalization. Is that making sense?
It's good. People trying to be tall.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody's trying to be short. No, but tall women are trying to be shorter. Because once they wear heels, then there's no man that can stand next to them except very tall men. And very tall men are very few. Right? There are not that many. Do you get it? So this is, I'm trying to show how genes express themselves and how we then try to manage around them. So it's the same thing with the underlying sicknesses or chronic illnesses that comes with our genetic, like high blood pressure, like hypertension, like cancer, and those opportunities. So we have to have knowledge about it. It's not like being tall or short. You don't know whether you're carrying that underlying genetic risk from your parents or grandparents who had it. That's why it's important that you run your genetic tests. You understand? That's the reason we do it. It's very important that you know it, right? Around that is something then we call epigenetics. What's epigenetics, Victor? You were in the last class where we discussed it. What's epigenetics?
I can only answer it as a Democrat.
You're not a Democrat.
Oh, I can't answer that.
So epigenetics,
It's outside of genetics.
no, it's how your lifestyle interacts with your genes to produce expression. So you're actually an expression of your lifestyle against your genes. So you are an epigenetic expression. That's why your brother might be both tall, one is big fat and one is slim, because of the lifestyle. Or your sister is, you're tall than your sister is short.
Skinny.
Yeah, skinny, right? Even though you come from the same father and mother. And it's the lifestyle, things that, it's like my kids. I have twins, boy and girl. One is light skin and one is dark skin, right? That's their underlying genes. But one is really overweight and one is not. That's the expression, the epigenetic expression of their lifestyle, the things that they choose. Is that making sense? So when we are testing here, I want to put our overall testing architecture in context so you understand it. When we are, all the tests that we run apart from your genetic tests are really to find your epigenetic expression, right? So we run the blood, 2 blood tests, right? The first one, which is with Boston Heart, we are looking at your metabolism, we are looking at your inflammation, we are looking at what else? We're looking at your lipid metabolism, your lipid panel, and we are looking at some genetic orientations. No, that's a different test. That's a different test. But you're correct. We do some hormones here, but I don't really like this test for hormones. You're actually correct. I was wrong to say no. We do some hormones here also. And we also do what? We look at CBC, we look at the total blood counts for red blood cells and white blood cells, right? So we learn a lot of things that drive your metabolism. All of these are expressions, because what does it tell us? It would tell us how you're metabolizing fat, your HDL, your LDL, your cholesterol. That is an issue that is genetically risk, but expressed through lifestyle. So even though you may have come with a high cholesterol risk, if your lifestyle favors a lower cholesterol level, that's what will be expressed. I need to stop there. Is this making sense? Victor doesn't look like it's clear. Okay, Victor, repeat it to me, what you have understood by what I just said.
Going back to the expression of epigenetics.
Yeah.
It's the lifestyle you live along with the genetics that you inherit.
Correct. And therefore that's what it's expressed. So if your parents died from cancer, say uterine cancer, and you have that underlying risk, then if you live a life of a vegetarian in low toxic environment, you avoid that. That's why what's her name? Angelina Jolie. She had the underlying no, she did not have breast cancer. She had the BRCA mutation. That's the potential genetic risk. But she took the severe action of removing her breasts, right, just to prevent herself getting it. So that didn't mean she had breast cancer. She just had the risk of it. And because she felt that that was the way to address it, or she could have addressed it in other ways, through lifestyle. But sometimes people would do that because they know that they have done things in their lifestyle that has increased that level of risk, like smoking, like drinking, like, sorry.
And exposure.
Yes, exposure, right, to a lot of those things then increases that overall expression of the cancer itself. You have question, Victor?
Even filaments in television tubes have those tungsten,
Yes.
cadmium.
Or some of us are exposed to asbestos and different things like that in the older houses, or mold, and just those things that are toxic that are in our environment, or eating, buying stuff. Go ahead, and then.
Okay, like Angelina Jolie, she doesn't have breast cancer yet. She did
Mastectomy.
I think it's too extreme because even though she removed the breast, is, the cancer cell, even the cancer cell, like one also is can create cancer too. I think it doesn't make sense.
Well, but, and then, that's her personal choice. So she made a decision for herself. We, in retrospect, cannot say whether it was a good choice or a bad choice. That is a choice she made to calm herself, to give herself peace. And so we need to respect that choice, because the alternative could have been that the cancer could have started in her breast and spread very quickly before she was even aware. So removing the breast is it's an extreme action, but it's also very preventative, based on the things that I just said. Because if you've lived a life where you eat a lot of sugar, you're exposed to toxicity, you smoke, and you do all those things, all your risks have just increased. So if you say, I'm going to eliminate it, it is actually perhaps a very good strategy for prevention. I'm not recommending it, but it is one of the options that is available for you to do. And we just need to learn from it rather than say whether it was good or bad. I don't know. Do you understand? Because I don't know where potentially her cancer would have come from. Or she might never have even had it. But she's just going to the extreme side of prevention. Because as you know, for some people, breast cancer can be very, very aggressive. Okay, is that making sense? Are we good now? All right, so let's talk about the different tests. And so these tests that we run generate for us what we call clinical biomarkers that give us an epigenetic picture of where you are, right? And then we also do the second type of blood test, which is really about micronutrients. And so what this is telling us is really how well you are absorbing the nutrients that you have, or how short you are with regard to your basic nutrient requirements. Is that making sense? So that's what's telling us. Because what happens, Victor, if you're short on your micronutrients or your basic nutrients?
Eventually your system can break down before it's time.
Okay, that's it.
Because of epigenetics.
Correct. Because the point is that nutrients are required by your genes to create proteins. And protein expression is what drives the whole architecture of the body. So if the nutrients are not available, right, that's why we say one of the big causes of illness is nutrient deficiency. If the nutrients are not available daily in the right amount, then the expression cannot happen at the right level. So they start making copies. That's where we go into what we call DNA methylation. They start making copies of the genes that are not as good as the original. And really, that is at the source of cancer. Is that clear? Is that making sense? Because that's when cells begin to go out of control. During the process of multiplication, they lose the exact copying and they start doing something else.
Is that part of evolution process? I mean, adapting?
Yes.
Is always evolving?
Yes.
And that's because of the diet is taking you in a different direction.
Yes. Okay, so as cells divide, they're dividing in a nutrient environment. When there is nutrient deficiency, then the cells are trying to adapt to that nutrient deficient environment. And in that process, some of them might become rogue and go into this crazy division because of that deficiency. That's why it's very important that you have the right nutrients inside your body all the time, right? So it creates this epigenetic environment that will suppress that underlying risk. So for example, if you already had the risk for cancer, but your nutrients are always at the right level, then the cells don't have that opportunity to run out of control. Is that making sense? So that's why having the right nutrients is very, very important. It suppresses that underlying risk that is there. Do we get it? And therefore, it actually changes your genetic structure so that when you have children, that risk might be eliminated. This is very important. Yes, right? That's why you see Asian children come to America, they eat American diet, they end up taller than the same Korean children born in Korea. Now when they marry and have kids, the kids seem to be taller than the kids born in Korea. You can see that already in the Chinese, in the Korean community, in the Vietnamese community, that the architecture is changing. And the only thing they've actually changed is the diet and the environment, right? because they're still eating Vietnamese food here, they're still eating Korean food here, but you can see the children growing taller already compared to the kids. If you go to Vietnam, almost everybody is short except Vincent, right? Right, all of them, right, Vincent? Most people in Vietnam are 5'1", 5'2", right? But you come to the US now and you look at all the kids, they are averaging 5'6", 5'7", right? Same thing with Korean kids, right? You can see the significant difference, which is really epigenetics. Is that making sense? So, and therefore now when they get married, their children are now carrying this new gene expression. So their children are now much taller.
That's evolution.
Yes, yes. But the kids in Korea are still shorter because that's how the environment and the expression is. That making sense? So the next thing we test is your urine. And we are getting two kinds of tests in the urine. Test one is looking at toxicity. And why do we test for toxicity?
To find out, so we can prepare, we can treat it.
Yeah, so why? But why are we testing for toxicity?
We're being bombarded by so much, we don't know what we have.
Because the heavy metals are triggers for cancer, for a lot of underlying risk. Mercury, cadmium, all those heavy metals are big triggers. And what are those triggers? When we say triggers, what are these lifestyle things doing? They're turning genes on or off. Right? So it's like we have a bank of switches. These lifestyle things, they come, like if you cannot sleep, it turns certain genes off. And so when the genes are making copies, they are now making copies of things that are off that should be on. Is that making sense?
The copies are being done 24 hours.
All the time, yes.
But when you sleep...
So, but if you cannot sleep, the impact of lack of sleep has epigenetic effects. The impact of stress, we're going to talk about it, has epigenetic effects. The impact of not taking enough nutrition has epigenetic effect. The impact of toxicity has epigenetic effects. So that's why those lifestyle things we talk about are very, very important, because they actually have this epigenetic effect on gene expression. Is that making sense? You have questions?
When I taking a lot of water,
Yeah.
we can reduce the toxicity.
Yes, it does, because water has the diluting impact. That's why you cannot actually overdrink water. Being hydrated is very important for two reasons. One, what she's just saying about dilution. But the second one is that it reduces the acidity of the body, which actually is not a good environment for cell turgidity, right? Because for cells to absorb and excrete, they need to have enough water. That's why when you do your body composition, we are looking at your total body water, and we are looking at the ratio of external to internal body water. Very, very important measurement. So when drinking good, clean water, filtered water, it's not just any water, because most of our water has a lot of toxicity. That's one of the reasons if you swim, you need to make sure you don't drink the water from the sea or from the pool, because a lot of pool water has fluorine and chlorides, right, which can be toxic at certain levels. Is that making sense? So we test for toxicity is very, very important, because we live in a toxic environment. We need to look for ways to lower our toxic load. And one of the ways of doing that is not to eat outside. And one of the ways to do that is not to drink water outside. I'm not saying don't do it at all, but do it at very low levels to reduce your toxicity. The water in restaurants are not filtered. Most of the food they cook in restaurants, there is a lot of issues with toxicity with it that we don't know, because they don't clean it as well as we would clean it if we were cooking at home. That's why we were less sick when we were eating our grandmother's cooking or our mother's cooking at home. because home cooking was actually much cleaner and better than eating in restaurants. But now that most of us we eat in restaurants, we then have that underlying challenge. Is that making sense? The next thing we test for in your urine is the hormones. And so we are looking at the stress hormones and the sex hormones. What did I say hormones were again, Endang? What are hormones?
Say it again.
What is a hormone? Hormone.
Hormone.
Like estrogen, like testosterone. What are they? Messengers for what? They regulate the underlying biochemistry. So when you're low on hormones, the body doesn't know how to help the body express itself. And hormones are almost central to us being human. Right? They regulate our mood, they regulate our happiness, they regulate our metabolism, they regulate our stress, they regulate a lot of things. So if your hormones are not in balance, for women, you get a lot of irritability. And when it's also unbalanced, you get women who want to be men. Then you get men who want to be women. Right? We begin to show characteristics that are not typical of that balance within the male architecture. And when we have very strong male hormones, we are very strong men. So being a strong man is really a hormonal expression. It's not our choice. Being a strong woman is also a hormonal expression, right? Like my ex-wife, she was very fertile. Every time she ovulated, she produced 2 eggs. That's why we kept having twins continuously, right? Some women are that fertile, right? And then some women are not, right? They can't even have children. Some men are very fertile. They produce a lot of sperm, and some men are not fertile at all. There is no sperm, right? All of these are all hormonally driven issues, okay? Then the next set of tests that we do is with your stool. When we look at your stool, we're actually looking at 2 things. We are looking at pathogens, and we are looking at metabolites. What?
Kim answered the question, what is hormone? And she answers contact.
Oh, all right. Oh, yeah. Oh, she did? Oh, Kim. Oh, Kim is watching. That's nice.
Hi, Kim.
All right. So, so when we do your stool, that's why the stool test is also very important. We are looking at the pathogens. What are the pathogens, Victor?
Poisons,
No, not poisons. No. We're looking at bacteria. Yeah, pathogens are bacteria. Your stomach, our microbiome, from our mouth, nose to our anus, is populated with a lot of bacteria, good and bad bacteria. Why do we need good and bad bacteria in our GI architecture?
For the digestion.
balance.
One, for digestion and for balance, right? Because why do we need bacteria for digestion?
Breakdown.
Yes, because to break down the complex foods, but also to eat up the bacteria that we are bringing in so it doesn't overwhelm us, right? So the bacteria that comes in with our food and other things helps with the breakdown, but it also eats up that new bacteria that we're introducing, right? And sometimes that new bacteria that comes in overwhelms our bacteria. Then we now have like streptococci expression, right? What is streptococci expression? What is streptococcus? Huh?
Streptococcus, bad.
Why is it bad?
Can cause infection.
It's infection, yeah. It causes really bad infection. And sometimes the antibiotics cannot get rid of it, right? So we also want to know what that balance is, right? The pathogen balance. We need them, but they need to be at a certain level to create that balance of good and bad bacteria. Typically, we have more good than bad to create that overall balance. That's why we support that you take prebiotics and probiotics daily, plus digest times to support that whole mechanism. It is the most important mechanism. If you don't take supplements, the most mandatory set of supplements that you need to take are the digestive enzymes, probiotics, prebiotics, and digestive enzymes. Is the most important set that you should take because it supports this overall digestive architecture. You understand? If you don't take any supplements every day, that is the one you should take every day. Even though I teach this, sometimes I forget to take my supplements, but I never forget to take my probiotics. Why? Because I've been taking it for over 2 years, and finally in the last 3 months, I go to the bathroom to do number 2 twice a day. Takes a long time to get to that place where your body now processes the food and you can go. My acupuncturist, the Korean doctor, told me this almost 5 years ago. You should go to the bathroom twice a day and the poo should be soft. Finally, I have got to that point where my body can express. That's where we want to get all of you to, where you are doing number 2 twice a day, right? And you're eating just between 9 or 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day, right? It's going to take time, but that's where we want to get into. Some days I have violated during the weekend, but normally during the week, that's the only time I eat, between 10 and 6 p.m. Okay? And then we also want to check on your metabolites. Why do we want to check on your metabolites in your stool? I like that. How efficient and effective. So when we're looking at efficiency of metabolism, what are we really looking at? I need for us to understand the words we're using. When we say efficiency, what are we looking at?
The total package.
Yes, you are on the right track. So everything that's coming in, how much of it is being absorbed? That's efficiency. Effectiveness is how much of the right things are being absorbed. Does that make sense? How much of it is being absorbed and excreted? Because sometimes when we do the stool analysis, there is more being being excreted than being absorbed, which shows us the efficiency of your architecture, right?
And the only way to find out is with the genetic test?
No, it's with the stool test and your blood test and micronutrients. So we can now look at all those tests. We can see how much is being excreted and how much you have in your blood and in your...
So if you're not absorbing certain...
It will show in your poo.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Right? It will show. We're looking at 3 things, guys. This is why we do comprehensive analysis. We are looking at the poo that's coming out and the pee, what's in there, and we are looking at your blood, what was absorbed, right? So if your poo is telling us that you have the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates and micronutrients, but they are not in your blood, and they are not in your micronutrient analysis, then where are they? What is happening? That's the question, right? That's why Prasanna and I then begin to look. What is happening? And what do you think would be happening? It's either you don't have enough you don't have enough of the right bacteria, or there is a violation, you have a leaky gut, or something else is going on, right? So it's a very important... Yes. Do you understand? So it's very important. So when we're doing all this tests, we are looking at the... No other clinic is going to do this with you. We're taking a really complete picture of what's really going on with your metabolism. Right?
Is that Genova's test?
Yes, the Genova, yes, diagnostics. Sorry,
So if
go
your
ahead.
body is not absorbing some of the nutrients, then the way to take care of the problem is with probiotics.
Yes, because typically we address it by a couple of ways. One is that we want to create balance, that bacteria balance, and secondly, we want to heal the leaky gut, right? So we want to make sure the barrier function is healthy for absorption and excretion, and we want to make sure that we have the healthy bacteria, and we also then want to fix your diet.
So if you do all that, your diet and your pro and your pre, how long before you start feeling the change?
It takes time.
A month?
No, it takes more long time because repairing the gut is a very long process. Because especially if you were a cesarean kid, it means that you always have a challenge with the balance of your microbiome. So that means that we really have to, some people have to be on overdose probiotics to force that balance. Or they actually have to take stool tablets to create that balance.
Because it has a four things actually: infection, inflammation, insufficiency, and balance.
Yes.
So it depends on the how that report comes and which things to address. If you have infection, then infection is really important to address.
Yes.
If you have imbalance, then that. So it depends on what kind of report.
What we have to fix. So, and all those things have to be in balance.
Is inflammation the same as an infection?
Typically, they go hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah, typically the infection causes inflammation, or inflammation may actually be caused by leaky gut. So you might have inflammation caused by leaky gut plus infection. Now we're in deep complication territory. And most of those bacterial infections in the stomach, most times antibiotics cannot heal it. And so you have to do a slow probiotic replacement and rebalance to actually get things back. And that's why we do the detox, because the detox on a 28-day is going to force you through an elimination diet that can reset your overall digestive architecture. Is that making sense? So the reason we do all of these tests is to have this clear underlying picture. One of the reasons I changed this topic this morning is because I was talking to somebody, and people go to gyms and they say we can make you fit and give you a diet plan. Exercise and diet are not the only reasons why people have chronic illness or have obesity, inflammation, and all of that. When you don't see this complete picture, it's very, the human body is very complicated. It's very difficult for us to understand your genetic risk, and therefore the underlying epigenetic drivers of why you're showing certain signs, or how we should manage proactively your health long term, right? For example, I'm genetically compromised with how my body manages carbohydrates. So I will never be friends with carbohydrates. That's just my condemnation. Sugar and I can never be friends in this lifetime.
You found that out because you took the test.
Because I took
Prior to that, did you have any knowledge or feeling? Or
Yes, I did, because when I eat that, I would just bloat out. My weight was uncontrollable. And I had this sense of comfort when I eat those carbohydrates.
So those are the things we should be looking for when you feel uncomfortable after you
Correct,
eat.
yes.
And reports like Pathway, they will give you a detailed report of that. If you have problem with sugar or any problem with the fatty acids or what kind of...
And it doesn't just mean for people like us who may have the tendency of being overweight. It's also a problem for people who cannot put on weight. You want to find out, why can I not put on weight? Because that means that your protein or muscular architecture is not working, right? That's a big problem. You see, that's the challenge about life. It's not just on this high side, it's also on the downside. So you look at somebody like Endang, and you look at her daughter, and you can see the difference. She's on this side, Endang, and the daughter is on this side. I can tell that, you know, she cannot put on weight. But her mother doesn't even eat, and the weight is in. Do you see that? And so that's the really issue about epigenetics, of saying, okay, how do I move my life around so that it fits that expression? So it's a very delicate thing. So even between mother and daughter, the expressions are very different. See that? One is more stressed than the other, right? And so all of those things come out. So these are the three big tests, 4 tests that we run. We run the stool test, gives us a lot of knowledge about. We run the blood tests. It tells us a lot of what's going on with the inside, outside the GI tract. Then we run the toxicity test. That tells us the enabling things that are conducting and enabling the overall flow of our underlying biochemistry. And the genetic test gives us the clear underlying risks that we came with, right? And then now, Prasanta and I sit down and design a recommended set of action for you. That's where we're going to go next. Any questions so far?
Okay, I have a question. Back to urine toxicity. Like Grace said, we have to drink a lot of water
Yes.
to get rid of toxic.
No, just to dilute the levels of toxicity. But there are a lot of other things you need to do on top of that.
Yes.
Like you are doing with Metabolic and Sulfuroclear, plus your 3 monthly detox plan. And the reason is because the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the people's hands we shake, we are carrying all of that toxicity inside of us.
Yeah. How about to dilute toxicity? One of them is drink a lot of water. How about, because it's so many different kind of water, like alkaline water.
Yeah, all those things are good, but we go for just a basic model. If you have water that is highly and properly double or triple filtrated, like the one we have here, that's good enough. A lot of people talk about Kangen water, alkaline water. That's okay. I tend to drink sparkling water or highly filtered water. And I know that since I started drinking that quality of water, the way I feel, even when in the morning or at night, because at night when I go home, I drink about 4 glasses of water before I go to bed. And during the night, I wake up to pee twice, and each time I drink a glass of water. And I actually feel really refreshed.
Doesn't that overwork the kidneys?
No, that is good for the kidneys because the kidneys are overwhelmed with toxicity. And so if you dilute and provide a lot of liquid, it reduces the workload of filtration. So think about it. What is more challenging to filter? A highly toxic or a more dilute? Right? So think about your filter. Which is harder? To filter something that's more toxic or to filter something that's highly diluted? Exactly. So, and you want to help your kidney to process it more slowly and more gently. Same thing with blood pressure and cholesterol, right? You want to clean the blood vessels so that blood flow is just more natural and more easier, right? Okay? All right. Any questions on this? So we're very clear now. And so we take these baseline tests when you first join us. Then we now know where you are. And the only other test we repeat over time is the urine test, the blood test, and the stool test. We don't need to take the genetic test anymore because we already know what it is. But why do we take the other test after about a year? Why do we need to take it? Correct. We want to see how well the lifestyle interventions that you're taking, how well they're working. Because something that we may have done for Victor may not work for you, right? Because we have just a tool set of 8 things we can do, right? What are those 8 things? Let's list them. Number 1 is macronutrients. So we can give you a couple of diet options, right? Number 2 is micronutrients. And what we can do is that we'll give you the basic plus. That's what normally we recommend. Number 3, hydration. You know how much water you should be drinking. Number 4 is your stress management. How you manage your stress. Number 5 is how you manage your toxicity exposure. Number 6 is exercise. Number 7 is what?
Sleep.
Correct. Number 7 is sleep, and number 8 is relationships. Okay. So all of us human beings, those are the 8 things that we call the ingredients for good biologic function. All of us need different combinations and amount of it as we grow older, right? Very, very important. So it doesn't matter whether you like exercise or not, you have to exercise. Why do you have to exercise, Enda? That's the only way you build muscle.
To circulate.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, to circulate and also to remove toxicity. But the big one is that's how we build muscle and cartilage and tendons. Because if you don't stretch it, it doesn't get stronger.
If you exercise to a certain level, you create endorphins.
No, you create inflammation. So your creatinine levels go up. That's why you need to be careful how much exercise. But you need exercise and the right kinds. So that's why like yoga and stretching and things like that are actually much better. Or you do what they're now calling short intensive interval training, right? Like run fast for 5 seconds and stop. And that's why tennis or swimming are very good sports, because they have short interval activities, right? I run and I play tennis and the ball drops, we start again. But when you just run continuously, that's really long-term not good for the body. So short, intense interval exercise is very important. Stretching, we do that every morning in my company. We stretch for like 5 minutes. Stretching is very important. It's something you can do on the mat in your bedroom. And you can do some simple yoga poses, which I try to do. You can do plank, you can do cobra, you can do different things that gives, or touch your toes, just things to stretch. I do it on the plane also when I'm flying. I'll stand up my seat every 2 hours and really stretch and turn my body, right? Well, I fly business class. You can't do that in economy, so. Or you can go to the passage and do it. I see people do it all the time in the toilet area. They'll stand during the flight and they'll go and do their exercises and stretch for blood circulation and just to wake the body up, right? Very important. Okay? So when we look at all these 8 things, we all have different aspects of it. So the question I was asking earlier was, why do we have to test after a year? Because we want to find out how well you're doing and how that's affecting your epigenetics, right? You can lie to us that you're sleeping well, or we can track it from your Fitbit, right? And That's why I also got this equipment for stress reduction, because a lot of people are struggling in managing their stress. So this equipment helps you to find that place and how to relax, especially women, right? Women's brains is very difficult to slow down. They have so many things running in their brain. I don't know whether it's because they don't run the world, but they want to run it in their head, right? But men tend to be able to switch off much easier than women, especially as women grow older. It's really very difficult. I don't know whether it's a hormonal issue. It's very difficult for them to stop their brains. And so I can see from a couple of our patients and friends I have that that's a big problem. And that's really why I'm buying this equipment, so we can begin to test and allow people to learn meditation and really how to calm themselves down, which is very, very important for the body to reset. Look at sleep. If you don't sleep, right, they use it in when they are doing investigations, or when they are really torture people. They make you not to sleep for a couple of days, and most of us after 3 or 4 days will lose total control. Sleep is a critical function for us to reset the clock. Sleep is a critical system for the body to excrete all the things that need to come out. If we don't sleep, the body doesn't have that space to shut down the main systems and do system cleanup. It cannot do that system cleanup if we're not sleeping. Is that important? So a lot of the cognitive problems like dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's actually come from people who do not sleep well. That's why more women, 3 to 1, have Alzheimer's than men. Very important issue.
It's almost like the discrepancy between men and women, or height and short.
Correct.
Compensation.
Exactly, yes. And just because, as I said, because women, a lot of them, once they go into menopause, run into a lot of sleep problems, then they tend to develop cardiovascular and cognitive issues like dementia and Alzheimer's and those other problems. Go to assisted living and you'll see from the population of people there with Alzheimer's that you have a lot more women than men in there. So this sleep issue is not a joke. So in this clinic, we really, really emphasize that people really address the underlying sleep issue, especially women, menopausal women, because of the underlying cardiovascular risk and the cognitive risks. You understand? These are really big risks. Most men don't have problems sleeping, right, Victor?
I don't. But I have a question. We follow everything here. How is that going to extend our age, or how long, or how can we predict?
No,
Or
no.
maybe you don't get hit by
Hold on. It does not extend your age.
Okay.
It extends the amount of healthy life within that age bracket. I think that, and this is the emerging theory, that our clocks for our cells are set already. Our cellular clocks are set already. The question is how healthy you're going to be until the clock stops. That is the current understanding, that the underlying clocks are set. And they have run experiments where they freeze the clock, and when they restart the cells, the clocks continue from where they were frozen. We don't know how to reset those clocks yet. So that we can, like when in Nigeria, when you buy an old car, the mechanics can turn they do that in Indonesia too. They turn what is that thing called? The odometer. The odometer. They reduce it. So the car may have done 200,000. they will reduce it to like 100,000 to give you, because we don't have history car, this registry that can tell you how old the car is. So the only way we used to know how old the car was the mileage. And so the mechanics had found a way of turning the mileage down, right? The same thing, we have those clocks. We haven't found a way yet to turn the clock down. And I know Victor might want the clock reset to 0.
Maybe 15 years old.
Oh. Right. Okay. So is this making sense? So are we good? Do we understand this? So each of these things, whether it's exercise, whether it's sleep, well, let's just explore relationships, because that's the one that people tend to ignore, right? Because we have a big cultural challenge with relationships. And the big cultural challenge is that we do not know how to have what we call crucial conversations, right? Let's explore that. What are crucial conversations? Enda, what is a crucial conversation?
There's so many. I mean,
No, but what? Don't give me an example of what a crucial conversation would feel like. It's a conversation of truth. It's a conversation where you speak your truth. Why is it difficult for us to have those kind of conversations?
Because we have ego.
Good.
Big
That's
ego.
one. There's another reason.
piece of harmony.
Yes, because we don't want to piss other people off. So those are the two reasons. But if you do not address your ego and you always want to please other people, what happens?
Don't have
One person
relationships.
No, that's not true. No, that you see, you jump to a very, very wrong conclusion. No, we carry all of that inside of us. That is where a lot of the residual stress comes from. Because all of us were given self-expression. If you don't say what you actually think, your body is going to pay that price.
We're that sensitive.
Yes.
Why do we act so tough?
Because it's all bullshit. Right? So if we don't actually self-express and deal with the consequences of it, then we would deal with it biologically. And that is why it's very important, if we're in a relationship where we cannot be truthful, then we'll pay the price for it. We should look for relationships where we can be truthful about what's really going on and how we feel, right? So you find out that that's why in the literature, the concept of passive-aggressive is developing, where because you're actually angry with me, when I take your cup, which is something simple, your reaction is overwhelming, when actually it is because you're pissed off with me because we overcharged your credit card. Do you see the point?
Okay.
And you didn't fight with me on the credit card issue because it would make you and I feel uncomfortable. So now you overreact on something very simple. Go ahead.
Because everyone is different to express their
That's correct, but all of us were given self-expression.
But truth will be the same.
Yes. There is a reason why you want to express yourself to me. You were given self-expression. Same thing was Grace. But if you choose to express and Grace chooses not to express, she's going to pay the biologic price for that.
So if they choose to do that, that's fine to her choice.
No, but that sickness is not good for her. You cannot say that's her choice. Because it's very, very detrimental. The price to speak and the price to not speak are not the same.
Yes, the cause is, like I said, is everyone is different. It's cannot, we cannot live someone else.
So, and that's why we are in a society where there's a lot of violence. That's how it comes out. See, like the boy yesterday who shoot the parents and the girlfriend. That's how it ultimately comes out. Because of lack of self-expression. And so when people are holding it in, one day, poof, they explode. And we pay the price. They interviewed the guy, the father who was shot. He had been telling his friend that my son is getting increasingly violent. And the friend had advised him, you need to take him to hospital.
Okay.
So the boy was going crazy. But the father did not want to expose to the neighbors that the son was crazy. And so they kept him at home, and that's what happens.
Okay. Because he has a mental issue.
We all have we all have mental issues. We all have mental issues. Different levels. Yeah, but we all have mental issues. And some of us will not self-express, we'll be thinking, how can I kill that asshole? Right? We just don't do it. Some people do it. We all think it. We're all mental. We all have mental problems. It's just really the level of it. And that's why some people, oh, he was such a good man. And then he kills his wife and children. He was a good man. And that's the point about self-expression, right? That when it is not really addressed, it can become very explosive. So this issue of relationships is a very important issue in our health. That we have relationships that accept us for who we really are, not who we pretend to be.
Right. This is relationship. There's so many kind of different.
Yes.
What
With
kind
children, with husband, with lovers, with friends, with parents. There's so many relationships. That's why life is really complicated. They're some relationships are very challenging, right? Yara, I mean, every time she has to call her mother, I think she's sweating. I'm just saying. Or call her father. Or speak to your wife who's in India. Or speak to your father or your mother. We all have very challenging relationships. And most of us do not have a strategy for how we deal with those relationships to make sure they're healthy relationships. For example, I know that most of my children cannot speak to me, but I speak to them very openly about what I think and what I believe. But they feel that I'm going to judge them if they tell me what they actually think, and I will not. I just know what I know and what I would prefer, and it is their lives. They need to be bold enough to do what it is that makes them happy, but accept the outcomes. Be accountable and responsible for the outcomes. Right? That's all I teach my kids. So don't say, I'm going to do my own thing, then expect me to pay for it. I'm not going to pay for your frivolity. Right? So that's the honesty that I bring to the relationships with my children. You have choice, but you have to be responsible and accountable for it. Right? And most of us cannot have that conversation. And so that's why I'm spending time just talking about relationships as a very, very important aspect of our overall health. That's one of the reasons I sleep well. I have no drama. So now let's talk about how we intervene, how Prasad and I take these results and then start building an agenda for change, or what we call the roadmap for transformation. How are we doing for time? Looks like we're good. So there are 6 biological systems that we want to address. There are 6 biological systems that address the overall pathway to health. So let's look at those 6 biological systems. Can somebody get me some water? So the number 1 biological system is our gastrointestinal system. Number 2 is our stress response. So I'm not putting this in order of importance, I'm just listing them. Number 3 is our immune system. Number 4 is our metabolic. Number 5 is our muscular skeletal system. And number 6 is our hormone system. These are the 6 biological systems that drive our overall body. Okay? So when I ask the question about detox, where does detox sit across these 6 systems? Oh, okay, exactly. In the GI. So you have detox there, right? So we can build a lot of programs. So the way we have decided that we have a 24-month intervention, right? This is 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. So he was asking the question, how long does it take for me to repair my GI? We think it takes about 2 years to get a GI. And what are the 2 things about the GI when we look at these biologic systems? What are the 2 things that are required to be in place? I will tell you. So when we take your GI, there are 2 fundamental things that are necessary to be in place. Number 1, you need to understand the GI system. Your GI system. Number 2, you need to understand how to impact it with the 8 lifestyle things we said about. So for example, you need to know how your system works, and you need to know everything you eat or drink or what, how it affects that GI system. That's what we need to accomplish in the 2 years. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a goal.
Yes. And so this is where we run the baseline. When you start, we ask that you do year 1 tests, and we ask that you do year 2 tests. So that's every 12 months. So we give you 1 period where you do adjustments, and then by here we think that you understood the 2 drivers, right? You have the knowledge and you have the lifestyle to support it, right? We empower you with knowledge so you can take proactive action. That's the 2 things that we're trying to give you. That you have the knowledge, you know your GI, and you know how to take actions to manage it appropriately. Once we have given you that, then you go into what we call our maintenance program. That's how long it takes. Because knowing your GI is an experiment. It's fine-tuning. Okay, I can eat eggs, but when is the best time for me to eat eggs? You have to find it. It takes time. I can eat dairy. Which dairy is best for me, and what times is best for me to eat dairy? Do you see that? That's not a simple exercise. Right now, you just eat it whenever you choose to eat it. Isn't that true?
Whatever's there.
Exactly. But the body is not like that. The body is really programmed. The body wants the things. It's like your car. You don't just put gas anytime you feel like. Everything is programmed. The body also has a program and a clock.
How do you feel about microwaving?
Bad. Why is it bad? Yeah, but what is it about the radiation?
It's because it's the high temperature is kill the nutrient.
No, it kills the nutrient, but there's something actually more important. Louder?
Change the rhythm of the food.
Correct. It changes the biologic structure of the food molecules. No, it changes the frequency of it. And you know that the food and the organs have frequency. So when you take things out of the wrong frequency, the body rejects it. That's why you meet some people and you're comfortable with them. It's an issue of frequency. And you meet some people and you know you're never gonna like them. And some, you didn't like them over time, right? 3 kinds of responses when we meet people. Some, instant. The energy works. You're in rhythm, right? You even know what the other person is going to say. You can anticipate, you can feel it. Your feelings are just running, the heartbeats are running together. With some people, it's like the minute you meet them, you just know you're never going to like this person. Right? It's not like when you want to get divorced, you look at your wife in the bed and say, I hate you, when they are sleeping, right? That develops over time where you go out of rhythm. So that underlying rhythm is very important, and that's the challenge with microwave. And people have studied it. When they microwave water, it actually changes the structure of the water. So a lot of people heat their coffee in the microwave. And so what is the issue with that underlying change in the molecular structure? The body doesn't recognize it anymore. The body doesn't know what it is. It's like gluten. That's the problem with how we gluten. The body doesn't know what it is. And so it causes a lot of inflammation, right? IBD, Crohn's disease. Gluten causes a lot of, most of us, they say almost 90% of Americans are intolerant of gluten. And yet many of you are still eating bread. I do too, once in a while. But somebody just told me the other day that Soup Plantation has gluten-free bread. I didn't know that. But that Soup Plantation is a restaurant. Okay? Is this making sense? So this is the journey. There are 3 kinds of ways you travel through this journey. There's reversal for people who have already underlying metabolic issues. There's management for people who don't have the deep commitment for reversal. And then there's prevention. Why does everybody have to take this journey, Enda? Why does everybody have to take this journey?
To have a healthy life.
No, but everybody, most people would tell you that they're healthy.
That's a part of us.
You think it's bullshit?
No, it's healthy is not because of what we say, but how the has and so on.
Thank you. You see, you guys are beginning to demonstrate that you're actually patients of this clinic. Health is defined at the clinical biomarker level. So for you to say you're healthy, my next question will be, show me your clinical biomarkers. Right? If everything is green and super, then I know you're healthy. If it is not, you're not healthy. Secondly,
it says I'm okay.
well, but that's the lie they're living. Yeah, that's a lie. If you don't have the clinical biomarkers to prove, then you're not healthy. You're living an illusion. Right? Like the kind of person who believes in love only on Valentine's Day. Right? Oh, you didn't send me flowers on Valentine's Day, therefore you don't love me. Yeah, really. Okay. Right? You're living that kind of illusion. Right? So, it is really important that, and so there is a second reason why you must be on this journey. Because aging itself is a stressor for chronic illness. Just growing old, you're going to get sick. That's a fact. Aging itself is a stressor for chronic illness. Plus, all the other things that plague us. Right? Like bad relationships, lack of sleep, no exercise, love eating sugar, right? We can just go on. And that's why we call this intelligent lifestyle design. Because most people's lives are not designed. Most people live a life of chaos. What am I having for breakfast? You see, my grandmother knew what we were going to eat every morning and every afternoon and every evening in the winter. And when harvest arrived, she knew what we were going to eat for in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. My grandmother in the village knew that. How many people today know that in the city? They have no idea.
Because we eat the same food. We got this winter or summer.
Same time.
And then we'll wonder why we're bored. You see that? In the village, I was always fascinated what my grandmother was going to make. The smells, I can still close my eyes today and I can smell my grandmother's cooking. Yeah, jollof rice, fried plantain, egusi soup. I mean, I can, yeah, fufu and peanut soup and banga soup and dry fish and melon, and I could go on and I get lost in a dream. Right? Banga soup, it's the palm oil nuts. You know the palm oil, only people grow in the tropic. We plug the palm oil nuts, they boil it, they squeeze the oil out of it, and they make soup. It is amazing soup. I know they have it in Vietnam also, and in Malaysia and Indonesia. You have palm nuts. So we take those nuts, we boil it, we remove that oily flesh, we squeeze it, they remove the oil, and then the rest of what remains, they make soup. Right? It's called banga soup. And she'll make it with dry fish. Right? So I can still dream it. I have not eaten that in 40 years. But I can still taste her cooking. Right? And all that mineral that I was getting from there. In the village, nobody takes supplements. It's because that's how we were eating. And that's why in the village they're very strong and they're very healthy and they tend to die only from infections, not from chronic illness. Our plague of civilization is chronic illness. And so we need to go back into what we call a designed lifestyle that is going to give us some order in the architecture, right? So we stop eating stupid things like bread that has no value, or pasta that has no value, and we start eating things that are actually important to our body, because the gluten-driven things are destroying and causing leaky gut. And that is the big thing you have to heal. I haven't eaten pasta now in more than 3 years. Because I can eat rice noodles. Rice noodles are okay. Because anything that grows, we can eat it. So they just ground it and made it into that. I can eat rice noodles. I can eat rice, but very, very little. And sugar is the worst one. You almost have to, because in America, sugar is in everything. And most of us have genetic risk issues with carbohydrate metabolism. Very few people don't have it. And typically those are Asians. Typically Koreans, Japanese, and some Chinese.